Welcome to Lombardi Live. It's my extreme honor to be joined today by a true legend in our industry. As a record producer, he has an amazing career, and as a drummer, he has an amazing career, not to mention being a singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist. Join me now in welcoming a man who has been on the freeway of love all of his entire life, the amazingly talented Narada Michael Walden.
Yeah, Don, that was said beautifully. Thank you, so kind, man.
And
so great.
What a true statement that is. We're going to talk a lot about your life and love, which I know is a big part of your life and certainly a big part of your music. Being Drum Channel, kind of going to geek out on the drummer side of your life. I think I first heard you with Mahavishnu, and I would say I was a fan back then. We didn't know each other. I'm guessing it was around 75. Does that sound right?
74, 75.
74, 75. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And looking back at that experience, plus I want to talk about those years, because a lot of the younger drummers today don't realize what the music scene was like. And I encourage them, if you're going to be a drummer today, that's where you're going to start studying all those bands and pick up on what was going on then. But what are your memories of that Mahavishnu gig in terms of a musical gig and just a life experience?
Well, it's so beautiful you bring it up. And I must tell you something, Don. I just got off a Zoom with Mahavishnu about a half an hour ago. So he's fresh on my brain right now. He's so beautiful and so vibrant. And I'm so thankful to him for him giving me the opportunity to play and grow in his band. He was at the top as far as music, jazz, rock, fusion, and India, jazz, blues, Miles Davis, Tony Williams, all that coming together. Billy Cobham, Jan Hammer, Rick Laird, Jerry Goodman, they just took that music that he was writing and just brought so much energy to the world. We had never heard anything like what they were doing at that time when the album of Inner Mounting Flame, his first album, Mahavishnu Orchestra, then The Birds of Fire, then Nothingness Between and Nothingness and Eternity. Those three albums were just out of this world. So then for me to be having the opportunity to work with him and grow with him and play with him and learn his inner musical secrets, it's a phenomenal experience for my life. And I'm still in shock by of the intensity of it. The intensity was incredible. John, you got to imagine, the shows themselves would be like 3.5 hours long. They're like marathons. And, playing at that kind of fever pitch. And then also being in tune with watching his body move. I learned a secret. If I could just play in a way that his body would get a rock move. He's playing so beautifully, but his body would kind of catch a rhythm. Once his body caught that rhythm, then we go to another stratosphere. It almost didn't matter what I'd play at that time. Once he's in that zone.
Yeah, you're bringing up something really important, I think, which I'd like to go over again. As the drummer in the band, in the back of the band, looking at the rest of the band, how important that is.
Yeah.
Mick Fleet was recently on, and he said, he would always watch the guys in the band to be sure he was making them dance, just like he was the guy at the end of the stadium making them dance. Part of the camaraderie of listening to each other, I think.
Yes, and feeling it, really listening and feeling it. Because Mahavishnu would often tell us, make sure you listen. Miles Davis taught us to listen. Listening was the most important thing. So then, okay, I'm listening, but I also found a great clue by watching his body. Because you're playing in odd meters all of a sudden. You're playing 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So then the body and the movement, the way it would feel, would be so like magical that then they would just take us to another world. So I'm just speaking about that because you're asking me in depth about that kind of experience. It's so intense that you're looking for everything to unlock the mysteries of the universe.
You reminded me of a story that Max Weinberg told in an interview some time ago on how he got the gig with the great Springsteen. And he went in and auditioned along with a lot of other people. And at one point, Bruce stopped playing and went like that. And Max, having experience playing in shows, of course, caught it. And he was the only drummer that caught it. And that changed his whole life's career. That's how important watching can be for you out there. And listen to these records that we're talking about, that Narada's mentioning, because that should be part of your learning library, your learning experience. Also really educational, in your life's journey, what do you think were the most important things that you studied that got you prepared for that gig, that you would like young drummers to know that they should be working on? Because someday this is when you can take advantage of all the things you've learned.
Well, I think that records are our greatest teachers because there's been so much history in music before us. You know, when we're little kids coming up, there's every kind of thing we can pick up on from Art Blakey and Max Roach and all the great people before us. You know, Philly Joe Jones, all those great people before us, and then young Tony Williams and young cats that came up even before we were on the scene. So I think it's great just to listen and partake in study of the cats who really push the boundaries before us, because we can still use it, because what goes around comes around. You know, I mean, if I can still play a groove as deep as Art Blakey played on The Sermon with Jimmy Smith, he'd have played no ad-libs for 20 minutes long. The record goes for 20 minutes long. But do chico, chip chip, puchigo, puchigo, chip chip, puchigo, puchigo, gong, chicken, and he put a backbeat on it, like 2 and 4. So I go, wow, as a kid, you can play a backbeat in jazz. You can play 2 and 4 in jazz, and it's cool, because you know you always think a lot of jazz are playing a lot of stuff, but it don't have to be that. It can just be blues and swing, and it's like, damn, for me that was like E equals MC squared. The 2 and the 4 is so powerful. So I learned from everything I listened to, and I would just tell kids to listen and open your ears, and learn from everything, and bring it a part of you. And then when it comes back out, it'll have its own flavor. But learn from the cats who put it down, like even the cat Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix. I learned from him. I learned from everybody. So when I'm with Mahavishnu Orchestra, you're hearing all those influences in me. You're hearing Billy Cobham coming out of me. You're hearing Sandy McGee from Cold Blood coming out of me. You're hearing Motown come out of me. You're hearing Curtis Mayfield come out of me. It's all in there. So I would say just listen, and in listening, you know, you find yourself, because these are all things that we love and that inspire us, and that people can connect to. Yeah, it's important.
And then how you put that together, because I remember like it was yesterday as a young drummer in those years, just hearing you do this, and it was like, it was you. Even though, as you're saying, you brought to that opportunity this huge dictionary of all these other drummers that you need to all listen to, and then it becomes yourself. You blend it in, and that's your statement that you're making. And of course, there was always the Art Blakey crush roll, that there was nothing ever like that the rest of our lives. That was unbelievable, you know. And he approached the drum set as great drummers do, including yourself, as kind of their voice. I mean, through your career, you've worked and produced a lot of the greatest voices of all time, where they've used their voice as an instrument, and you've played with a lot of the greatest musicians of all time who've used their instrument as a voice. It's kind of interesting combination between the two. How it all has to do with communicating, I think, right?
Yes, very much so. And don't forget that the singers lock on to the rhythm of the drum. The drum is the heartbeat. The drum is the heartbeat. And the singer locks into that heartbeat. And it's magic when the singer and the drummer are really one. And I find that in all the hit records I've tried to make, that I'm clear with the singer, with the rhythm. I'm clear with the singer. You know, do your thing, being ever aware of what the drum is, what the drum is doing, and then we have success, because the people need that rhythm in their life around the planet. You know, they can't speak about it, but they need it. It's like food.
That answers another one of my questions I was going to ask. I think, you know, when drummers are coming into the studio for the first time, the important thing that they should be looking for, or what you as a producer are looking for in a specific drummer that might, you know, because you're a matchmaker at that point. How do you get the drummer and the singer, you know, to be in unison with each other, I guess. That's I've never thought of that before, but that's one of your extreme talents, because you've done that so well and throughout all those hits.
Oh, thank you so much. But I'm a student. I've learned from the Beatles, Motown, Hendrix, all the things people I love. I've learned. There's an electricity when the rhythm hooks up. You know, we think about Ringo Starr. Ringo had a magic in his charisma, and you can hear his charisma blending into John Lennon and Paul and George, and those cats catching a fire with Ringo. It's because Ringo caught a fire, they catch a fire. See what I mean?
I recently interviewed a young girl, Nandi, who you might be aware of, and we talked about her first experience in terms of the Beatles and seeing it. But usually it has to do with how he played and what he was doing and his musical influence with the rest of the band. She said something that is so much along the lines of your life. What made her want to play drums is because she saw a drummer in a band who looked so happy, she wanted to be that happy. And that's what it should be, is a happy experience.
I love
So, and looking back at the 70s, I mean, let's educate some of the younger drummers out there about what they should be getting out of the bands from that era. And you mentioned the swing part of it, which is so important, you know, and I love when you say that the 2 and 4, you know, you can add that in and still swing. Some of the greatest rock musicians of all time had a great swing. I mean, they had the jazz background. You can, and I kind of use on Drum Channel the word swing or jazz more as a genre. Sometimes jazz has a connotation of your grandparents' music or an older style of music. But to me, jazz is just the swing or the feeling you want to put into everything that you do. What's the best way for young drummers, you think, to understand that difference between, and you hear it when you hear a drummer playing, sometimes it feels good, sometimes it feels, you know, just you're not quite as much into, you're not dancing if you're in the back of the stadium. What's that secret sauce you think that they could practice that would maybe get them to understand that?
Well, it's a magic, and I think, again, to listen to some of the greats, they're the great teachers. That's a wonderful thing to do. Also, I think it's important then to find your own inner clock. You know, when you play in bars, in the clubs, where I came up, you had to have a way to find that pocket to make the people dance. You had to have a way to make that, or you wouldn't get hired for the gig. It was just A to B. If you couldn't make people feel good with your pocket, with either your funk or your backbeat, if you couldn't play James Brown Cold Sweat, if you couldn't play just the simplest things that just had to feel a certain way, then you couldn't get a gig. So for me, it was like I wanted to eat. I wanted to have a job. I wanted to make my life in music. So I had to learn by watching the cats around me. You know, maybe they wouldn't have as much chops as I would have, but they had a feel. So I had to watch that feel. Maybe the feel was giving each beat full value. Maybe if time is here, they play a little bit on the backside of the beat intentionally to make it feel a certain way. Or maybe some cats would push it a little bit to make it feel a certain way. But I would just check these things out. So I think what I'm really seeing, a lot of cats coming up now, because of YouTube and because they can watch all these things in our lives, they're becoming some great drummers now. They're becoming some great drummers. You could say maybe a lot of cats are overplaying. That's okay. That's what they want to do. But they're aware of watching so much history that's come down now. You know, watching cats who play with Marvin Gaye, watching cats who play, even Stevie Wonder, watching Stevie Wonder play drums. People are watching now and they can actually see it. Back when I was a little kid, we could only hear the record if we were lucky to go watch them play live. But now I can go, there's Stevie Wonder playing for me. Wow. There's whoever I love playing for me. Boom. So I know I'm kind of getting long-winded, but I just want to just give the love to the people who bring the love. Acknowledge that love that they're giving us. Eat it, sleep it, sweat it, breathe it, and then play it. And playing them little dives, playing them little hole-in-the-wall juke joints. That's where you learn. You know, if you're lucky, then you can get to a big stadium because the band's got a big popularity. But you learn playing those little places. You learn playing those little places where the people just want to have a little drinking and get a good vibe on, and you can make them feel good. If you can make a little juke joint feel good, you can make a stadium feel good.
You got it. And you're saying something that when we grew up was so obvious and there was so much opportunity to do it. That is playing in a band. You know, the obvious advantage of the internet is the world has gotten smaller. So you have drummers from all these other nations, Cuba, listening to American drummers as they grow up, as opposed to having to wait till they were in their 20s and come to America to get introduced to jazz. So culturally, it's kind of become a real mix from all around the world. Playing in a band and communicating and listening. And it's an obvious question, and I know the obvious answer, but let's reinforce how important that is for young kids out there to get with their friends and have a conversation, because it's kind of like we are here.
Yes, it's important to play with other people. Very important. That's how you learn how to then relax, with other people, make them relax, because it's our job to get their best. It's our job as drummer to get their best. So that's a science. It's bringing love. We have to learn how to translate our love on our instrument to the other people in the band, so they feel comfortable, relaxed enough to go where they want to go, to do what they got to do. It's because I love Carlos Santana that he'll have a trust in me to let him do what he wants to do. It's because John McLaughlin will look at me. He knows I'm loving him so much that he'll go where he has to go. Look at John Coltrane with Elvin Jones. Elvin Jones said playing with John Coltrane was like he would die for John Coltrane, and you can hear that. That's real love. So we have to practice how to have real love for people, and that's what the music is. The more we love, the more the music is incredible.
On several occasions, I got to see Coltrane at Shelley's Manhole, which was the jazz club here in town, and Shelley would let me stand right behind the bandstand. And on one occasion, when they finished the break and came over, Coltrane just hugged Elvin and Elvin said, Johnny, I love you, I love you. I never thought about that till right now. That was kind of an interesting moment.
Yes.
And they were speaking to each other in a way that kind of changed a drummer's perspective in the way he was approaching not only the drum set but a bit the rhythm section back in those days. And again, we're back into the into the 70s when all those seminal albums were made, and
yes,
the drummer's role somewhat changed. You mentioned something I've got to go back to, and I'll get real geeky here, but it's important because we get some questions about this in terms of stress and release, in terms of how that affects the song. And when you're talking about playing time and laying back a little bit, do you, as a drummer, do you look for yourself to lay back and have the bass player or the other band kind of stay where they're at in order to create that feel so everybody doesn't come back? How do you look at, or going ahead a little bit?
Okay, I got what you're asking. In my case, I like the feeling when the bass player goes with me. In other words, if I'm the timekeeper, which I am as a drummer, if I intend to pull it back, come back with me. Where I go, you go. Like for dancing, okay? You're the woman, I'm the man. If I slow down, you slow down. I go fast, you go fast. We are one. That's the magic in it. Now, I mean, I know there's like free jazz where we're all going to do our own thing, but in general, I want the bass with me. If I'm pushing it, let's push it. If we're going to drag it, let's drag it. And that should be for the whole band. Wherever the drummer sets it down, that's what the band should do.
And then there's some young drummers are like, I'm having a problem with my time, or I speed up a little bit. There's the click track, in our lifetime we've seen the click track be born. But a lot of the records that we listened to growing up, there weren't any click tracks, and especially some of the jazz albums, they sped up quite a bit. But nobody ever complained about that. Some of the Earth, Wind and Fire songs, I mean, some of them ended up like dramatically faster than they started out. Milestones, the classic Miles Davis. If you take that record and you put the needle back to the beginning of it, I was like, well, wait a minute, is this the same song? I didn't notice that it sped up until you actually beat it. But your general perception of click tracks and drummers and how they can lock in their time. How do you play with a click track and make it feel good?
By doing it. If the gig is to play with a click track, then you got to practice playing with a click track so you become at ease with it, so it sounds natural. Like you mentioned some of the songs before where a song will intentionally speed up. That's totally cool. But in the studio where it requires a click track on some things, then you got to be adapted being able to do that. That's why we love Steve Gadd so much, because Gadd can make it click just feel so natural. He's learned how to breathe with it and make it his friend. And I've had to do the same thing where I make a click track my friend. So I would aspire to tell all drummers to make the click track your friend. It's part of the band, so that if he's part of the band, then make him swing. Just stay with him and make him swing. It's not going to speed up. It's not going to slow down. So make it swing right where it's at. There's a magic in that. It's a discipline.
And it's something that you would acquire by just doing it, I would think, right?
Yes.
Practicing it.
You have to do it. It's like practice. It's like playing tennis, playing golf, doing anything. You got to practice it.
Want to talk for a minute about your life outside of the drum set, from getting behind it and being in the producer position. All of the amazing artists that you've produced, ranging in different genres, from Aretha Franklin, Herbie Hancock. Any particular, looking back at moments that were kind of epiphanies or things that you learned from as a result of working with those artists?
That's a great question you asked me, Don. Epiphanies I may have had. And I got to tell you something. Every day's been an epiphany. Talking to you is an epiphany right now. Every bit of my life has been a learning experience. And I'm so happy that I've been able to be in a position to be with these people, to hear something that they may say, to be around their attitude of how they feel about something, and to witness that. So I'm really I'm learning. I'm like a student, and so, for example, talking to Aretha Franklin on the telephone, Clive Davis said, "Well, just give her a phone call." I call Aretha Franklin, the great Aretha Franklin, and I say, "Well, getting to know you, what do you do in your life for fun?" She said, "Oh, well, maybe I go out to a nightclub at night. Maybe I go into a nightclub and I see a guy in the corner. Maybe the guy in the corner looks kind of good to me. Maybe I look at him, he looks at me. It's like, who's zooming who? But he thinks he's got me. But then the fish jumps off the hook." I'm going, who's zooming who? He thinks he's got me, but the fish jumps off the hook. That becomes a hit. Just her talking. So I learned these things just by being open, like you're being open to me right now, taking these things that someone just says off the cuff and using it. One time I called Ray Charles, the great Ray Charles, the genius of soul. And I said, "Ray, I've heard that you love a Brick House by the Commodores." "Oh, I love Brick House." I said, "Well, Ray, we could cut Brick House for you, maybe a new arrangement. Or a thing that the kids are doing now these days is they do a thing that's called sampling. They sample a part of Brick House, and they groove with it, and they maybe even put a different song on top of that groove, kind of mixing and matching and making kind of a new thing happen." He goes, "Well, I know we haven't worked together yet, but I think that's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard." He said, "Would Mozart do some shit like that? Would Beethoven do some shit? Would Rachmaninoff do some shit like that?" I said, "No, Mr. Charles, they wouldn't do that." He said, "Exactly. You take your creative mind, your creative spirit, and give me some creative soul funk." I said, "Yes, Mr. Charles." So, I'm always learning from everybody. I'm learning, man. I'm a constant student.
In other words, it's a constant flow coming from somewhere up above that's just going to always bring those moments to you, wherever they might come from.
That's right, and to be open to it. And let me speak about that. The willingness is the magic. If we're open, the magic can come. If we think we know it all, we think we've seen it all, oh, you don't need me anymore? Oh, you don't need me? The Spirit says, oh, you don't need me? Oh, I won't mess with you. Then we suffer. But when we say no, God or the Spirit or flowers or inspiration, come. My heart's open. Show me, teach me, show me. That willingness lets the magic happen. So that's why I'm so glad you asked that question, because I pray for the hits. I pray to be with Mahavishnu. Every bit of it, I've asked for, I prayed for. And so when it happens, I'm open, I'm willing to let the thing happen. Teach me, show me. I think that's a big part of being successful in music and drumming. That we're not know-it-alls. That we're open and humble to learn. And just that openness lets it happen.
For some reason, I think it's a big part of the drumming community, maybe even a little more so than other instruments. I mean, it is a very close-knit community, partly because I think the instrument is so diverse. You can be a great drummer with not that much chops. You can be a great drummer with a lot of chops. You can play great country, and maybe not so much in the jazz field, because that's where your roots are. So you're never going to get together with another drummer and not learn something that you don't know at the end of the day. When you're in the studio and that you're going through a track and that moment happens, when we used to call it in the old days a hook. I don't know what they call it anymore, but is there a point where you just go, this is a hit, this is it? Do you have a kind of an epiphany moment as those songs are being made?
if I can hear the singer sing it on top of the groove that we laid down, and then I get a goosebump in my hands and my arms, like Quincy talks about, then I can feel very positive and very happy. And I fall in love very easily with our songs. I fall in love very easily with what we're doing. And so I just hope that other people can hear it and appreciate it too. But I am focusing on, if it's in the pop world, in the hit world, I am focusing on what you call the hook. I want to make sure that chorus is what I know that people can sing and latch on to. So I'm very much aware of that. Is my chorus a hit chorus? Is my song a hit song? Even in the fusion world, Mahavishnu wrote hit fusion music. Those themes are beautiful themes. Joe Zawinul wrote beautiful themes. Miles Davis played some beautiful themes. So that theme is really, really critical. So I'm very much aware of that. And when it all comes together, yes, I do get excited. I do get shivers. Yes.
And another interesting part of your life, which we never talked to anybody too much about, movie soundtracks. Approaching that, how do you look at that as opposed to, a regular artist date?
Well, I'm going to kind of demystify it. Because I know when a person approaches me to write a theme for a movie, what they really want is a strong song, but they want something that's going to generate as a hit box office. So they're coming to me because they hope I can write a song, make a song that's going to be a hit to make box office numbers. So that's what I approach these songs. Like, for example, James Bond. They said, okay, can you make something out of this title called License to Kill? So in my heart, I go to the piano. Got a license to kill anyone who tried to break us apart, and make it pretty. Make it pretty. So yeah, oh wow, it's a tough title, but you're making it so beautiful. So I'm very thoughtful about how to do that, what I can do to make people like it. Even Gladys Knight was like, should I be singing about killing? I said, but Gladys, you're going to defend the person who might hurt you. So feel the beauty of the whole thing. And then she started singing it and then smash. So I know that when movie people come to me, they really want me to find another way to make a hit song. So that's where I'm really coming from. I'm always putting that hat on, how to make a hit for that film. I'm never just hired to do backdrop music. I'm hired to bring a smash.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And just curious, in doing that, do you have somebody talks to you about a film? Does automatically in your mind come a certain artist that you would like to have be part of that project, or how do you tie those two together?
It's magical. Sometimes the artist could be suggested to me. For example, on this song for Nothing is Going to Stop Us Now, for a film called Mannequin back in the day, it was suggested, what about the band Starship? So, oh, they're great. So then there it was. So that can happen where a band is actually brought along with a project. And other times, it's not. It's like, who do you think should sing this song? Who do you think should do this? So I think, well, who am I working with at that time? Who's around in my stratosphere I can make a phone call to? So it's kind of a kismet magic thing that happens.
You just reminded me of a story from what we talked about earlier in terms of how songs are generated, how they can come out of, you don't know where. I guess the same thing is true when you're in the studio. You never know what's going to happen at the end of the day. James Gatson told a great story where they were in the studio all day long. It was late at night. They were doing a hit, working on getting the hit record done. Finally, the producer came out and said, we got it. And then he said, and James was starting to pack up, and he said, well, we need a B-side, back in those days when you were doing A-sides and B-sides, right? So he said, oh God, we don't really have any. Let's within a half hour or something, they did I Will Survive. And that was, nobody knows what the hit was supposed to be that they worked on all day long. But things can come to you in different ways at different opportunities. In terms of the writing process, how much does that evolve when you're actually in the studio? Do you bring a thought, and does it work as an interactive band, or are you pretty well set by the time the musicians get there?
For me, I'm always about that song, so I'm trying to always be cognizant of finding, writing, having something in my pocket that I think could be a hit. And then I'm also open to writing on the spot with people. That's cool too. But even if I'm doing that, I'll start with one line. I'll say, give me the title. Because I personally work very, very well from a title. Just getting that, then I can focus on that hook again. Get that established, feel good about it, and then work on a verse or a bridge. So that's how it usually works in my case. I'm about that hook, get that punchline. We're all happy about that, move on, then get a verse. And then we can kind of go deep into a verse, what that verse might want to speak about. And then the bridge is always, but the heart says this. And then here comes the hook again. Hey, everybody, come join in. Join in on the hook and sing with me all around the world. So.
Back in those days when all those great records were made in the late 60s and 70s, when the Wrecking Crew was out there doing all that, I recently interviewed Hal Blaine a couple years ago, and I thought I'd get a drumnistic answer to my question, like when you go into the studio, what's the first thing you look at? It's usually going to be the tempo, the genre, what's the groove, what's that? He said, the first thing I like to see is the lyrics.
Yeah.
So for a drummer, I thought that was really insightful.
That's right.
That's how is your drumming going to affect the feel of a song? And you've said that so well, but that's on Drum Channel. We try and teach you how to play the drums. We talk about you have to have technique. I think every drummer overuses it and tries to get it out of their system in their late teens. It's just part of growing up, I think. But then, how do you translate from being a good drummer, because you fill the qualifications of a drummer if you get called on the gig, to being that great musician? What do you think what should a drummer look for, you think, that would really make him be thought of in that next level?
Well, for me, I don't know. I just love people who can make time feel good. I think making time feel good is an art. Making time feel good is an art. Quincy Jones had all those smashes with Michael Jackson, with John Robinson. Why John Robinson? Because John Robinson makes time feel good. You mentioned James Gadson. James Gadson knows how to make time feel good. And just speaking of, when I first came to LA, they brought one of James Gadsden's snare drums in so I could play on it. And I was surprised how it was tuned really low with loose snares. Like, I was like, wow. I would never tune a snare like that. But that's what he would use. It would be low and loose. So that was an education. You mentioned Hal Blaine. He's a genius. Hal Blaine is a damn genius. The way that he could play those drums and evoke the emotion out of those songs and still do the fills he wanted to do with Ronnie Spector and Righteous Brothers, with Phil Spector. All those great records that they made. And he would just build them and build them and build them and build them. So I'm just, the guys you've mentioned, I'm in awe of those guys. So I've learned from those guys. I'm learning with those guys. We hope to make records as great as they made. Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel, what they get into, what Laura Nyro got into, were those sensitive songs, what James Taylor gets into with those sensitive songs, Fire and Rain, and how Russ Kunkel can play just so sensitive. So sensitive. Carly Simon's records. So I'm a fan of like Carole King's birthday today. Carole King's birthday. So far away. Doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? And it's just so sensitive, the drumming. So I think that's a big thing, to stay sensitive. Because a lot of us can play loud, but can you play sensitive? And give each beat full value. That's the deep thing. See, in the 70s and 60s, they were masters of that stuff. They were masters of it.
As you can hear, the young drummers out there, I talk to them, they don't even know about the Wrecking Crew. It is a movie that you can see, I believe it's on Amazon, which gives you a background, and listening to all those songs. You've probably heard this story. Recently we had a couple of great interviews with Charlie Watts. Actually, Charlie joined in an interview we have with Hal Blaine, because he wanted to be he wanted to be in on a conversation we had with Hal Blaine, which was a great story. Don't mind us if we tell some stories back and forth. But so
yeah.
we did the interview with Charlie and with Hal and Jim Keltner, and then we're standing in my office, and Charlie turns to me and says, "Could you get a drum head and a Sharpie?" So I thought, yeah, this is cool. He's going to write, something. And I'd already had a signed picture, so I wasn't sure what he was going to do. So somebody brings in a drum head and a Sharpie. I give it to him, and he turns to Hal and says, "Hal, could I please have your autograph?" So if Charlie Watts is asking for your autograph, you've pretty much arrived.
Oh yeah, man.
It was a great moment. And I think, young drummers have to become not only aware of everybody that's come before them, but what they brought to the table, what they brought to the instrument when we're talking about drumming, and what they brought to the record as far as being a great musician.
I have to say something. I forget the gentleman's name. Maybe you could help me. But I went to a Rolling Stones concert out here in San Francisco, and backstage was the genius drummer who had played with Little Richard, and Charlie had brought him in because that was his cat. I forget the gentleman's name. Forgive me. But I met him. I have a picture with him. Help me find his name. But this guy is that early rock and roll, knew how to do it cat with Little Richard, Tutti Frutti, Good Golly Miss Molly, Sally, all them records, man. You know what I'm saying? So Charlie had him flown in to meet him. Shoot. See, I'm saying they've been doing this stuff for a long time, man. So these kids should be learning from that stuff. Because what goes around comes around. Every 20 years.
What's happening today in the current day up at your studios? Tell us a little bit about that, what you've got going on.
I'm very happy to have my studio. We just worked on Carlos Santana's new album. I did a jam with Steve Winwood and Carlos called A Wider Shade of Pale, a new version of that, and a song to feature his wife, Cindy, called Cindy, where she plays the drums. Cindy Blackman Santana, another genius drummer. And I've also been working with her, too. She has a version of a John Lennon song called Imagine, which is very funky and very cool. We're working with another singer coming out of the UK named Jennifer Saran. I want to get George Benson and her together. I want to get her and Sting together. I have a new song myself coming out with Sting, Carlos, Stevie Wonder on harmonica, and Ishmael Lowe called The More I Love My Life. It'll be out this spring, I hope. And I'm making new albums for myself. One that's about every day of the week, having a song for every day of the week to inspire us. And then also a new dance album I want to make, because I love people dancing. I got the love of Prince in my heart. Prince loved to see people dance. I do too. Even the Mahavishnu Orchestra, when we play all the odd meter stuff, right? It's my drum solo time. I play a drum solo, but then I'd fall back into some Cold Sweat by James Brown. I love to see people dance. So it's a big part of my heart, man, to see people dance. So I want to keep that alive. And I'm just happy to be, I want to share with you, Don, I feel young. I feel invigorated. I got an 8-year-old named Kelly, a 6-year-old named Kayla, and a 3-year-old boy named Michael. So what it's done, I'm like 19 years old in my heart. I'm still like fighting like a little kid again. So I'm excited to take on projects. I'm excited to stay happy, successful, thrive. Anybody that calls me, I want to take the phone call, what I can do, tour a little bit, play a little bit, write a little bit, produce a little bit, keep everything in the world. When you call me, I'm like, Don, my man, what you need? You know what I mean? I'm like eager, man. I'm like excited. And by the way, I love the DW drums. They're right out here right now. I play them on all my sessions. I got some hot drums. So thank you for that. When I tour with Jeff Beck, I tour with Journey, I go around, but the DW drums sound good. And how I got turned on to your drums, for Sting, I did 13 Rainforest shows. And we always rent a kit out of the SIR. They're pink champagne, DW, and they sounded so beautiful. Do, 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 do. I was like, damn, I sound good. It must be the drums.
Well, let me add one more thing in there. He knows how to hit them. That's a big part of it, too. You have to be relaxed and bring the sound out of the drum, not put it back into the drum. So
you got to hit it, that's for sure. You definitely got to hit a drum. That's right. And the drum likes it when you hit it. It comes to life. It needs to be hit. So, yeah.
You do that beautifully.
And speaking of which, I want to tell you a story, because I know you love Terry Bozzio. Terry Bozzio and I will be on the same shows a couple times, and those are like prize fights in the divine way. Because I come on with Mahavishnu wearing white shorts, white top, little tennis things, and go out with Mahavishnu Orchestra for our shows, whatever. And then I will come Terry with a black cape, no shirt, black pants. You know what I mean? Massive drum kit with Frank Zappa, and they go at it. Such intensities. I'll never forget it to this day. Mahavishnu Orchestra and Frank Zappa shows. I'm talking about bringing it. Man, when you see Terry, give him my love.
Yeah. By the way, he said to give you his love too, because I will be seeing him in about a half hour after we're done. He's going to be filming some more lessons here for us. So he wanted to give you a big hello.
Okay.
And I don't know if when you get off the phone with like an Aretha Franklin, if you go, I just talked to Aretha Franklin, but I know I was telling everybody I'm going to interview Narada Michael Walden tomorrow. It's as exciting to me as probably as it is as it goes up the chain, you know, when you're talking to these major artists who are at the same level of yourself. So, but we're all drummers here in the drumming community, and we're all here to help each other. So,
Yes, and I got to tell you two things. One, I love you, Don. Your sincerity, you're so genuine, and you know everything. What I mean by that, you've seen the greats. You've gone and just seen these things because you're a musician, you're a drummer, you love it. Your passion's still there. You're sharing with us your love. You're keeping alive in us your love. This is what this whole drum channel represents. So I want to first thank you for that. I mean, I've known you for a long time now, and I'm very fond of one thing I did with you. I came to your studio. You had a whole drum set mic'd up for me. I was fresh off playing with Jeff Beck. So I sat down on those drums and I burned through wired lead boots on them drums. This sounded so good. All the microphones were like, pow. You were happy. You stood by my tom-toms. I fell in love with you, man. So I'm just telling everyone to make sure you check out Don, the passion for the drum channel. You're keeping it alive. This is what I love. You want to keep it alive. You're keeping it alive. And also, I'm seeing these new kids. Like there's a girl, I don't know, she's out of some either European country or Australia somewhere. She plays like she played this record for Journey called "Don't Stop Believing," where she broke it down how the four patterns that Steve Smith invented. But I learned how to play "Don't Stop Believing" by watching her, because Steve was so slick about it, so badass. It's hard to watch to learn. But when she broke it down, this little girl, 15 years old, Sina, S-I-N-A. I'm a fan of these kids learning it, and then they're teaching me how they interpret it. It was incredible. So I'm really a fan of what's happening now, is what I'm trying to say. What's going around, coming around. These kids are catching it. They're catching it because of Drum Channel. They're catching it because of what's going on. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
and to have you out there, not only are you carrying the torch, you're also blazing the trail. So to be doing both things at one time is amazing. And I know that's just, you can do nothing else because that's part of your psyche and that's part of your love.
Yeah.
And at NaradaMichaelWalden.com, right, your website, easy to find. And if you go on there, you see a great picture of a little girl with some drumsticks.
It's my daughter.
That's really fantastic, you know. And it's a great age too, because you know, as a teacher, if you give a kid that age a pair of drumsticks, they make a perfect stroke because they're not inhibited by thinking they're holding drumsticks. They're just using their body in order to make a sound. So you know, it's a great time to reflect back on, you know, and as a teacher. And your foundation. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's something that I want to talk to you more about offline, because we can help you more in that area.
Thank you so much, Don. Our foundation is called the Narada Michael Walden Foundation. We've been together this year is 25 years, and I just felt it started when I saw music in schools was dwindling. Education for music in schools was going away. They weren't being funded. So then I was part of a Grammy in Schools program where the Grammys would go in schools and kind of teach the kids and talk about music. And I saw the kids come to life like I would do, like I did in school. So I thought, let me start off how I can keep this music education going. So there was a pocket of kids over here not far that needed some instruments and wanted to play, and I kind of helped them out, and we do some Christmas shows together. And by doing Christmas shows together, having them sing and play Little Drummer Boy and play some drums and sing, they got so happy. Then I'd invite Carlos Santana to come play. Now they're playing with Carlos Santana. Or I'd invite Clarence Clemens to come. Now they're playing with Clarence Clemens. I'd invite Sting. Now they're playing with Sting. I invite Ronnie Spector, the Ronettes. Now they're playing with the Ronettes. All these kids are singing and playing with the Ronettes. I invite Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. So I saw there's a beauty in the legends who love the music and the kids who love the music coming together. So our foundation brings the legends and the kids together for music education, and that's what we're doing. And then this year, once the pandemic calms down, which is hopefully soon, we're bringing out Run DMC. I want to invite Blondie and the kids to play with Run DMC and Blondie for that throwdown. So that's what we're doing, man.
It's fantastic. No, what great work you do there for sure. And they can get in touch with the foundation through your website too, correct?
Yes.
That would be the way for you to do that. Narada, I can't thank you enough for joining us today here at Drum Channel. With 57 number ones, 3 Grammys, an Emmy, I believe, also.
Yes.
And whatever the Drummers Award of the Year ever has been, you know, for a lifetime achievement, you would certainly get it from the drumming community too.
Thank you, Tom.
And I appreciate everything that you've done. It's always exciting, you know, when you see Narada. It's kind of like I rarely hear somebody say anything about Narada other than saying, you know, you love the guy, because you emit that. And I think also on your website there's a track you do called Evolution.
Oh yeah.
What a beautiful way that is to explain, I think, the way you look at everything, right?
Yes, it's true. Especially when I had my children, it really showed me, you know. We are evolving as a species. We're evolving as mankind. Now it's my turn to help raise these children, say the right things, be inspiring to them like my dad and my mom were to me. You know, it's a responsibility of love. It's evolution.
Of life, of music, of happiness.
Yeah, that's right.
Look forward to spending more time with you, Narada. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Don. And my love to you, all your fans and all your listeners, and DW Drums, everybody who's there. And just want to really just say, I look forward to this interview because I know it's a chance for me to say how much I love you, love what you're doing, and want to inspire all the drummers, because the drummers are the heartbeat. Like, check it out. One thing, you can have a great band and the drummer's just okay, the band will be just okay. You can have a drummer who's genius, who's great, and the band, the members around are just okay guys. But the band will sound genius. That's the power of the drummer. So I'm telling all you drummers, take a deep breath and realize the power you got when you play them drums. When you do them things right and have a good time, whatever you're going to do, everybody sounds good. The party's on. The party is on. Okay, that's it.
Can't have a better wrap-up than that. Thank you, Narada. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you so much. Thank you for watching Lombardi Live. And don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel and at Drum Channel on Instagram and Facebook.